My name is David Chen, and I've been an inmate at Iron Gate Penitentiary for 8 months now. 8 months that have completely shattered everything I thought I knew about power, control, and what lurks in the shadows of this world. Before I tell you what's really happening inside these walls, you need to understand something crucial. The guards don't run this prison anymore. The warden doesn't run this prison. Hell, even the state doesn't run this prison. The gangs control everything here. And I mean everything in ways you couldn't possibly imagine. I came to Iron Gate on a 3-year sentence for embezzlement. White-collar crime, non-violent. Figured I'd keep my head down, do my time, maybe work in the library. That's what guys like me do, right? Stay away from the prison politics, avoid the gangs, mind your own business. But at Iron Gate, there is no staying away. There is no minding your own business, because the moment you walk through those gates, you're already part of something whether you want to be or not. The first thing you notice about Iron Gate is how quiet it is. Not peaceful quiet, but wrong quiet. The kind of silence that makes your instincts scream that something is fundamentally off. In the movies, prisons are loud, inmates yelling, guards shouting orders, metal doors clanging. But Iron Gate operates on whispers and unspoken rules that everyone seems to know except you. My first day in general population, my cellmate Torres didn't say a word to me, just pointed to my bunk and went back to reading his book. When I tried to introduce myself, ask him questions about how things worked here, he held up one finger to his lips, the universal sign for shut up. So I shut up. That night, after lights out, Torres finally spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper, and he kept glancing at the walls like they might be listening. "You picked a bad time to come to Iron Gate," he said. "Things changed here about 2 years ago. The balance shifted. You'll understand soon enough, but whatever you do, don't ask questions. Don't draw attention. And most importantly, when the choosing happens, make the right choice." I asked him what the choosing was, but he just rolled over and refused to say another word. I lay in my bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling the wrongness of this place seep into my bones. The air itself felt heavy, oppressive, like the building was holding its breath. Have you ever felt that kind of dread? That deep certainty that you've walked into something you can't walk out of? The next morning during breakfast, I started to understand what Torres meant. The cafeteria was divided into sections, but not in the way you'd expect. 3 major gangs controlled Iron Gate: the Saints, the Reapers, and the Brotherhood. But they didn't sit in opposing territories, glaring at each other like rival factions usually do. Instead, they sat together at the center tables in perfect harmony, laughing, sharing food, acting like the best of friends. The guards stood along the walls, but something about their posture was wrong. They weren't watching the inmates with authority. They were watching with fear. I saw one guard accidentally make eye contact with a gang member, and he immediately looked away, his face pale. These weren't men in control. They were men who knew they were powerless. An older inmate named Miller sat down next to me during lunch. He was in his 60s, been at Iron Gate for 15 years. "You're new," he said, not as a question, but as a statement. "You'll find out soon enough, but I'll save you some confusion. The gangs run everything now. They decide who eats, who works, who gets transferred, who gets visitors. The guards just go through the motions." I asked him how that was possible. How could the prison administration allow gangs to take over? Miller's laugh was bitter and hollow. Allow? Son, the administration is terrified. 3 wardens have quit in 2 years. Guards transfer out as soon as they can. Something happened here. Something that gave the gangs a kind of power that has nothing to do with numbers or violence. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping even lower. They made a deal with something that shouldn't exist. And now that something gives them control over this place in exchange for, well, you'll see what they give in return. Before I could press him for more information, a gang member approached our table. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with the saint's tattoo on his neck. But there was something off about his eyes. They were too bright, almost reflective, like an animal's eyes caught in headlight. "Miller," he said, his voice pleasant but carrying an undertone of absolute authority. "You talking too much again?" Miller immediately went silent, his head bowed. The gang member turned to me, and when his eyes met mine, I felt a cold shock run through my body. Those weren't normal eyes. There was something else looking at me from behind them, something ancient and hungry. "David Chen," he said, and I hadn't told anyone my name yet. "Welcome to Iron Gate. You'll be chosen soon. Make the right decision." He walked away, and I sat there trembling, not from fear exactly, but from the recognition that I'd just encountered something fundamentally wrong with reality itself. Miller wouldn't look at me after that. He just got up and left, abandoning his tray. What would you do if someone knew your name without you ever telling them? If their eyes reflected something that shouldn't exist? That night, Torres finally explained what was happening. 2 years ago, the Reapers found something during a contraband operation. They were digging in the old solitary confinement wing, the one that's been closed since the 80s. Found a room that wasn't on any blueprints, sealed up with old concrete. When they broke through, they found symbols on the walls, drawings, writing in languages nobody recognized. He paused, checking. Again, that nobody could hear us. The story goes that one of the Reaper leaders, a guy named Marcus Vega, he touched one of the symbols and something spoke to him, offered him a deal. Real power, control over the prison, protection, abilities beyond normal human limits. In exchange, they had to serve it, feed it, give it what it wanted. I asked what it wanted, but deep down, I already knew the answer. "Souls," Torres whispered. "Not killed? That's too simple. Changed, converted. Every month, they choose inmates who have no protection, no gang affiliation, no family on the outside asking questions. They take them down to that room, and whatever is down there, it changes them. They come back different. Obedient, part of the collective. The gangs use them for whatever they need. But really, those people belong to the thing in the basement now." Would you believe him? Or would you think he'd lost his mind from too many years behind bars? The next few weeks, I watched and learned the new rules of Iron Gate. The gangs had divided up the prison into territories, but not for conflict. They worked together with perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. Drugs flowed freely, violence was almost non-existent, and the guards had become nothing more than glorified observers. I saw inmates disappear and reappear changed. Their eyes would have that same reflective quality. They'd move with unnatural synchronization. They'd obey any gang member's orders without question. And most disturbingly, they seemed happy about it, wearing constant smiles that never quite reached those strange eyes. The warden tried to reassert control once. I was there when it happened. He came into the yard with a squad of riot guards, ready to crack down on the gang activity. Marcus Vega, the Reaper leader, simply walked up to him and whispered something. The warden's face went white. He looked at Vega's eyes, and whatever he saw there made him turn around and leave without another word. The riot guards followed him, confused but obedient. We never saw that warden again. The new one who replaced him never even tried to challenge the gangs. Torres was right about the choosing. It happened exactly 1 month after I arrived. I was called to what was supposedly a counseling session. But when I got to the room, all 3 gang leaders were there. Marcus Vega of the Reapers, James Prophet Williams of the Saints, and Dmitri Volkov of the Brotherhood. 3 men who should have been enemies, sitting together like business partners. "David Chen," Vega said, and again that cold shock ran through me at his inhuman eyes. "You've been observed, evaluated. You're educated, careful, intelligent. Those are valuable traits. We're offering you a choice that most inmates don't get." Prophet Williams leaned forward. "You can join us, become part of something greater than yourself. You'll have protection, privileges, purpose, or you can remain independent, unaffiliated, vulnerable. The choosing will happen either way, but those who volunteer, who come willingly, they retain more of themselves in the transformation." Volkov smiled, and his teeth seemed too sharp. "We know what you're thinking, that you'll refuse, report this to authorities, expose what's happening. But understand, the authorities already know. They've made their own accommodations with the power we serve. This entire prison is an offering, and everyone inside these walls is either a servant or a sacrifice." I wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but I felt paralyzed by those 6 eyes staring at me. Behind them, I could sense something else, the real presence they served, vast and patient and utterly inhuman. "I need time," I managed to say, my voice cracking. Vega nodded. "You have until next month. But understand, David, the longer you wait, the less of yourself will remain after the choosing. Those who fight it the hardest lose the most. Those who accept it, who embrace it, they keep their minds, their personalities, even their free will, mostly. They just serve a higher purpose now." I was dismissed, and I stumbled back to my cell in a daze. Torres looked at me with pity. "They chose you," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "I was chosen too," he admitted. "3 weeks ago, I've been putting off the decision, but I know I can't wait much longer. Over the next weeks, I tried everything. I filed complaints that disappeared before reaching anyone. I tried to call my lawyer, but the phone system mysteriously didn't work for me. I attempted to talk to a guard, but he walked away mid-sentence, his eyes reflecting that same unnatural light. The entire prison was compromised, from the lowest inmate to the highest administrator. I saw Torres get taken one night. He'd delayed too long, made his choice by not choosing. They came for him during the night, gang members moving in perfect synchronization. He didn't scream or fight. He just looked at me with resignation as they led him away. When he came back 3 days later, he sat on his bunk and smiled at me with those reflective eyes. "You should accept the offer, David," he said in a voice that sounded like Torres but wasn't quite right. "It's not as bad as you think. Actually, it's quite peaceful. No more worry, no more fear, no more existential dread, just purpose and belonging." I asked him what happened in that room, but he just kept smiling. "You'll see soon enough. We all see eventually. The entity is patient, but it always gets what it wants. Iron Gate is its feeding ground, and we are its harvest." The next day, I noticed something that had been happening gradually but I'd missed. More than half the inmates now had those eyes. The gangs had converted hundreds of prisoners over the past 2 years, building an army of the changed. And it wasn't just inmates. Some guards had the eyes now too. Even the chaplain who gave Sunday services had started speaking with that same hollow enthusiasm about finding purpose and accepting your fate. I tried to map the prison, looking for escape routes or at least areas that might be safe. But everywhere I went, I felt watched. The cameras tracked me with unusual focus. Inmates would appear in hallways I thought were empty. The building itself seemed aware of me, hostile to my attempts at independence. Miller found me in the library one day. His eyes were still normal, but he looked exhausted. "I've been here 15 years, he said. "Watched this place go from a normal prison to whatever it is now. You want to know the worst part? It works. Crime is down, violence is nearly zero. Everyone is obedient and productive. From the state's perspective, Iron Gate is a model facility. They don't care what's really happening as long as the numbers look good." He handed me a folded piece of paper. "This is everything I've learned about the entity. Not that it will help you escape. Nobody escapes Iron Gate. But maybe knowing what you're dealing with will help you make your choice with open eyes." I read the paper later in my cell. Miller had compiled information from old prison records, interviews with long-term inmates, even some research into the history of the land before the prison was built. The entity had been here long before Iron Gate, possibly for centuries. Native tribes had avoided this area, called it cursed ground, where the boundary between worlds was thin. The prison was built on top of it either through ignorance or, more disturbingly, on purpose. The entity fed on human consciousness, not destroying it, but absorbing it, adding it to its collective. Each person it claimed made it stronger, expanded its influence. The gang leaders had been its first willing servants, and through them it had gradually taken control of the entire facility. The symbols in that sealed room were a doorway, and every person brought there was pulled through it, changed, made part of something vast and alien. My month was almost up. I could feel time running out like sand through an hourglass. The gang members watched me with increasing interest. Torres tried to convince me daily to accept the transformation willingly. Even Miller eventually stopped helping me, his eyes growing distant and resigned. On the last day of my month, I was brought to the sealed wing. The gang leaders were there, along with dozens of the changed inmates. The room beyond the broken concrete wall pulsed with a sickly green light. The symbols on the wall seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them, writhing like living things. "David Chen," Vega said, and his voice echoed with more than one tone, like multiple beings speaking in harmony. "Your time has come. Step into the room and be transformed, or be dragged in fighting. Either way, the entity claims you tonight." I looked at that doorway, at the writhing symbols, at the light that hurt to see. I thought about fighting, screaming, refusing, but I could feel the entity's presence, now vast and patient, filling the entire prison like water, filling a tank. There was no escape, no rescue coming, no hope of outside intervention. "I have one question," I said, stalling. "What happens after? Do I cease to exist? Do I become a puppet? What's left of the people who go through that door?" Prophet Williams stepped forward. "You remain yourself, mostly. Your memories, your personality, your preferences, they all stay. You just serve a greater purpose now. You become part of a collective consciousness that spans dimensions. You feel the entity's needs as your own desires. You work to help it grow, to bring others to the transformation. But you're not a puppet, David. You're a willing participant in something far beyond human understanding. I looked at the changed inmates behind them. They didn't look like zombies or monsters. They looked normal, functional, even content. But those eyes, those terrible reflective eyes that showed something inhuman looking back, that was what waited for me. "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I knew the answer. Volkov laughed. "Then we drag you in and you wake up changed anyway, but with far less of your original self intact. The entity prefers willing participants, but it accepts sacrifices too. Your choice is not whether to transform, David. Your choice is how much of yourself survives the transformation." I stood at that threshold for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Behind me, the normal world, my identity, my humanity. Ahead, something incomprehensible, emerging with an alien consciousness that had infiltrated every aspect of this prison. There was no third option, no escape hatch, no last-minute rescue. What would you choose? Your humanity, knowing you'd lose it anyway? Or willing transformation, keeping more of yourself, but serving something inhuman? In the end, I didn't choose. I simply stopped resisting. I let my muscles relax, my mind quiet, my fear subside into acceptance. And I walked forward into that green light on my own feet. The transformation is hard to describe. It didn't hurt exactly, but it wasn't pleasant either. It felt like my consciousness was being pulled apart and rewoven, like every neuron was being rewritten, like my sense of self was dissolving and reforming into something completely new. I felt the entity's presence fully, and it was vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure. It existed in dimensions I couldn't see but could suddenly feel. It had been here for centuries, waiting, slowly growing. But I also felt the others, hundreds of consciousnesses connected to the entity. We were separate but linked, individual but collective. I could sense their thoughts, feel their emotions, share their experiences. It was overwhelming and somehow completely right. The entity showed me things during the transformation. I saw its origins, or at least what my human mind could comprehend of them. It had come from somewhere else, slipped through. A crack in reality that existed where Iron Gate now stood. The native tribes had sensed it, felt its hunger, and sealed the area with their rituals and warnings. But those seals had weakened over time, and when the prison was built, when they started filling it with human suffering and desperation, the entity had fed on that darkness, grown stronger, learned to communicate. I saw how it had waited decades before reaching out, studying humanity, learning our languages and desires and fears. I saw Marcus Vega's first contact with it 2 years ago, how terrified he'd been initially, how the entity had offered him everything he wanted in exchange for service. I saw the first transformations, rough and imperfect, the entity learning how to merge with human consciousness without destroying it completely. And I saw the future it planned, spreading from prison to prison, using the criminal justice system itself as a vehicle for expansion. Every facility it claimed became a breeding ground for the transformed, and those transformed individuals would eventually be released back into society, carrying the entity's presence with them, spreading its influence like a benevolent virus. When I emerged from that room, Torres was waiting. He looked at my eyes and smiled. "Welcome home, brother," he said, and I understood what he meant. This was home now, this collective, this entity, this purpose. I was David Chen still, but also something more, something greater. The gang leaders greeted me, but now I understood they weren't really leaders. They were the entity's voice, its hands in the physical world. We all served the same master, worked toward the same goal. The prison was just the beginning. The entity had plans, vast and patient plans, to spread beyond these walls, to claim more facilities, more consciousnesses, more servants. I've been transformed for 3 months now. I still look like David Chen when I stare at my reflection. I still have all my memories, my skills, my personality. But I also have purpose, direction, belonging that I never experienced before. The entity's needs are my needs. Its hunger is my hunger. Its patience is my patience. The prison runs smoothly because we all want it to. There's no conflict between the gangs because we're all parts of the same greater whole. We maintain the appearance of separate groups for outside observers, but in reality, we move with singular purpose. I work in the library now, helping to identify new candidates for transformation, smoothing over concerns from family members, maintaining the facade that everything at Iron Gate is normal. New inmates arrive at Iron Gate daily. Most join us willingly. Those who resist are brought to the room anyway. The collective grows steadily, the entity strengthens, and Iron Gate becomes its domain each day. The state sends prisoners, we transform them, and the cycle continues. Nobody questions the low violence or smooth operation. The numbers look good, and that's what matters to funding decision. Sometimes I wonder if any part of the old David Chen remains, or if I'm just fooling myself, a puppet convinced of its own free will. But those thoughts fade quickly, drowned out by the collective consciousness, by the entity's patient presence, by the knowledge that I serve something far greater than myself. Do you think I'm still human? Or did I become something else the moment I stepped through that door? The gangs control everything here at Iron Gate, but the gangs themselves are controlled by something even they don't fully understand. We're all servants to the entity now, all parts of its growing consciousness. And every day, more join us, more transform, more become part of something that transcends individual human existence. You might think this is a horror story, a warning about what lurks in the shadows of our institutions. But from where I stand now, it's not horror. It's evolution, it's transcendence, it's the future, slowly spreading from this prison to others, from inmates to guards, to administrators, to the world beyond. The gangs control everything here, yes, but something far older and far stranger controls the gangs. And soon, if the entity's patience pays off, it will control much more than just one prison in the American correction system. My name is David Chen, and I am both prisoner and servant, individual and collective, human and something more. I am part of Iron Gate now, and Iron Gate is part of something vast and patient and inevitable. The gangs control everything here, but we all serve the same master in the end. And here's what keeps me up at night, even though I'm supposed to be at peace with this transformation. If you were offered the same choice, what would you do? Would you fight to stay human, knowing you'd lose anyway? Or would you accept the collective, trading your individual freedom for purpose and belonging? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to know if you think I made the right choice.